What's up, everybody? So, let's give everybody a couple minutes to get back in it or get in the video. While everybody's doing that, I'll get everything ready. Hope everybody had a great Saturday watching football. I seem to be getting a sore throat, so bear with me. And during the video, I'll have this great old orange juice with me the whole time, so cheers to that. But it was a good Saturday for football, even though we didn't have a lot of volume of, a big volume of games or any big matchups like that, other than I think the only ranked matchup was Wisconsin-Michigan. But other than that, a lot of good football, because like I was talking about during the week, maybe that we get lucky and get some upsets or something like that going. So, alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and hopefully make this video a little bit shorter than it was last week. Don't have a ton of games to talk about because of what I just said. A lot of cupcakes on the schedule. And even though I'm an Alabama fan, just the fact that we do that a lot really irritates me. So just know that that's felt all across the country. I hate these cupcake games. I wish that we played conference games. We should be playing non-conference games, even though our conference is traditionally tough. A lot of people say it's probably the toughest or one of the top couple toughest conferences in the country, and has been for a very long time. I still wish that we would play meaningful games. And even if we're going to play out-of-conference games, play somebody that can actually stay within 59 points. So, with that said, we'll jump right in. I'm going to go ACC first. Clemson took care of business. They have their big cupcake game. The Citadel yesterday, they won 61-3. Let's see. Florida State put up probably more points in one game yesterday than they have the entire year, scoring 77, winning 77-6. North Carolina, 65-10. And Boston College didn't play necessarily a cupcake, but just not a really good team. And UConn, Boston College wins 39-16. So with that said, that gets all the cupcakes out of the way. Did have a few good games in the ACC yesterday. Had some, Virginia and Miami was a great game if you got to watch that. That game, Virginia brought everything they had, and they played them as hard as they could. They jumped out 14-0. Let them come back tied up 14-14. And then they scored a touchdown, went into halftime leading 21-14. Come out, scored another touchdown, went up 28-14. At that time, you're just thinking if they can just play a little bit of defense, they will win this game and get the upset. They couldn't. Let Miami come back. Ultimately, Miami started playing a lot better in the second half. Wins that game 44-28. Miami stays undefeated. This is the first time that Mark Richt has ever went 10-0. So all those years at Georgia, and this is the first time he's went 10-0. All those great teams he had. North Carolina State and Wake Forest, that was a good game. Wake Forest was, they were a favored and were up one, or favored by one going into this game. And by the way, I appreciate that comment. The Leans did go 3-0 yesterday, so I appreciate that, man. They've been good all year. But anyway, so Wake Forest won that game 30-24. They were a 1-point favorite all during the week, even though NC State is the favored team, or not the favored team, but the ranked team in that game. Wake Forest comes out and gets the win and goes 7-4. Also, North Carolina State 7-4. So we'll see what happens there to finish out the year. Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech. Pittsburgh was 4-6 coming in this game, and as I've been talking the last couple weeks, if you guys have been paying attention to that, I always list who's at least close to being bowl eligible. And the reason I do that is because those teams generally play harder at the end of the year because they want to get that extra game. It really helps the coaches because they would get another, I think it's 15 to 20 practices. It's quite a bit before the bowl game. But it also, these kids get to go to these bowl games. They get all kind of swag. There's some of these bowl games that used to give out TVs. So, they get all kinds of nice stuff. Any kind of I don't know if they go all the way up to laptops, but I know they've gave out iPads and things like that before. So it's a big deal for these kids to get to go to these bowl games and get this stuff. So they will play a little harder. And I mean, as silly as that may sound, that is definitely a factor when you take into consideration the last couple games of the year. So Virginia Tech does get the win here, 20-14. They moved to 8-3. Pittsburgh is 4-7. They had a good game. They put up 14 and scored in first and the fourth quarter, but they just couldn't finish it. So they take a L, and that eliminates them from being bowl eligible. If you remember back last Thursday, they lost to North Carolina on Thursday night. If they'd have won that game, I think they would have made it to a bowl, because they finish up with Miami. So yesterday would have been their best chance. But, they just kind of let that season slip out away from them. Georgia Tech and Duke. Georgia Tech loses this game 43-20. So Duke put up a lot of points on them. Last week Duke played Army, and I talked about this last week. Army runs a triple option, and I thought that was a great position to put a team like Army, on your schedule, because the next week you had a conference game against a team that run the exact same thing. So pretty much you had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. The only problem is Duke lost to Army last week, so that kind of screwed them up on that. But it did work out in the end as far as the practice and getting used to what they had to do to get ready for Georgia Tech. They get the win 43-20, moved to 5-6. Georgia Tech moves to 5-5. Both of these teams have a shot at getting to a bowl next, if they get a win next week. Louisville and Syracuse was a blowout. I thought that game would be a lot closer than it was. Syracuse moves to 4-7, and that eliminates them from a bowl. Louisville moves to 7-4, winning this game 56-10. So obviously Syracuse just didn't have anything for them. That's the last 2 years. This has been a blowout. Last year it was early in the year. I think it was like week 2 or week 3 that this game was played on a Friday night, and that's really when we got to see Lamar Jackson really come out and start his Heisman campaign, was against Syracuse. So that pretty much wraps up the ACC. As far as conference championship, that's been decided as far as who's going to play. It is Clemson versus Miami. That'll happen in a couple weeks. Teams that can get bowl eligible: Georgia Tech and Duke that I just mentioned. Georgia Tech plays Georgia next week out of the SEC, plays them at home. They did beat Georgia last year, come from behind, tied it up, and I believe they took them to overtime or either beat them right at the end of the game. And then Duke has Wake Forest, so both of those teams have tough games to play, but obviously it's going to be a rivalry game for the Georgia Tech-Georgia game, so anything can happen there. And as far as Duke, they've just got to play better, and it looks like they put up a lot of points, so they must be ready, playing a little better than they were. So they do have a shot. So that wraps up the ACC. Next conference is the Big 12. I'll talk about it. Yesterday was a big deal as far as outside of the game, in my opinion. You got Oklahoma and Kansas, and if you've seen anything about this game, they've been showing it on all the highlights and stuff. Baker Mayfield pulls a bonehead play, or bonehead day, really. He come out during warm-ups, run his mouth. He had a big game, put up a lot of points, and played a good game. But at the same time, I don't know how many of those Heisman votes have been sent in, but some of those guys are old school, and they don't like that kind of stuff. Grabbing your crotch and stuff on TV is not a good look, and we'll see if that hurts him in this Heisman thing, just because, that, like I said, a lot of these guys are old school. They're not going to like that, and if they haven't sent in their vote, they may not vote for him. We don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. But a lot of them have sent in their vote, so we'll see what happens with that. Yesterday they had 5 games. Every team in the conference was playing. It was a good day. Oklahoma did get a 41-3 win over Kansas. Kansas was favored, I believe, somewhere around 37. So it's according to where you got in on that game, you may have been all right. I wouldn't have touched them because you don't touch a bad team. And if you took 37, you lost by 1 point after all that. So, like I said, don't take bad teams. If you don't get anything else out of me, don't take bad teams. TCU and Texas Tech. Texas Tech's trying to find that 6th win. They lose 27-3 to TCU. Moves them to 5-6, 2-6 in the conference. I don't know how much longer they're going to keep Cliff. You know, they keep having these mediocre seasons, and it's good to make these bowl games, but they also want to see some progression, and I just don't think that you're seeing any of that out of him. So don't know how much longer they're going to keep him. If he makes it this year, good for him. If not, it wouldn't surprise me. TCU moves to 9-2, 6-2 in the Big 12, and I think that wraps them up to play Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. Remember that this conference plays a round robin with their 10 teams, and then the best 2 this year will play in the championship game against each other as a rematch, and I think that wraps them up. So even if TCU were to lose next week, they have the tiebreaker with Oklahoma State head-to-head, so that should put them into the winning and playing Oklahoma for a conference. Kansas State come out yesterday and played awesome, winning 45-40 against Oklahoma State. If you've seen any of the highlights or was keeping up with that game at all, you know that Kansas State jumped out. It was like 45-20, and then or 42-20 going into the fourth quarter. So they were winning big. Almost let Oklahoma State come back. And I believe that Kansas State played a freshman quarterback yesterday, so you want to keep that in your mind. Moves them to being bowl eligible at 6-5, 4-4 in the Big 12. Oklahoma State moves to 8-3, 5-3 in the Big 12. So Oklahoma State, I had them playing in the championship game, and they just hadn't had the year that I thought they would. I honestly thought they would go undefeated. If you watch the video at the beginning of the season, I had them going undefeated in the regular season and then losing to Oklahoma in the rematch in the Big 12 championship game. That's obviously not going to happen, but they're still 8-3, so it's not a bad year. Texas becomes bowl eligible, 28-14 win over West Virginia. So both Kansas State and Texas won that 6th game on the road yesterday. So and both of them were underdogs, and they won outright. So like I keep saying, these teams that are right on the verge of being bowl eligible, always keep that in mind. Next year, whenever you're looking at these things, it may not be this week because this is rivalry week coming up, but just keep in mind, in future years and such, when you get to that 10th, 11th, 12th game, or 10 through 12th week, which is your 9 through 11 games, just keep that in mind of where they stand as far as going to a bowl or not. And then Iowa State wins against Baylor 23-13. 10-point victory. It was a 9-point line, so they nailed that. Iowa State moves to 7-4, 5-3 in the Big 12. They've had a great year. And for Iowa State standards, that's a wonderful year for them guys. And I really think that guy, that coach, if he stays there, I think they're going to be okay. They're going to have these kind of years moving on. I don't think they'll ever be 10-2, 11-1. But the 7-4s, 8-3, or 9-3, 8-4, those type of years, I really think that's sustainable for this team. So Baylor moves to 1-10, continues their terrible year. I think that there was just a lot of growing pains. Obviously, they lost a lot of people, a lot of players, or the problems they've had off the field. So all in all, I think definitely next year, that's Baylor. You may want to look at them if they can get any kind of quarterback in the offseason, maybe somebody transferring in, something like that. You're going to want to pay attention to Baylor next year. Coach is one of those guys that is going to bounce back. So looking into next year, that's going to be a good play, I think, is Baylor. So that wraps up the Big 12. Texas Tech is the only team that can become bowl eligible this week, and they play Texas. So moving right along, like I said, bear with me. Throat's killing me. Yesterday I stayed at home all day, so there's really no reason that I should be sick like this, but I am. So just bear with me, and we're going to get through this. But I really want to talk about it because yesterday, you moved the last couple of weeks of the season, It's awesome. November football for college is the best that it can be. It's high school playoffs. It's college rivalry games. It's the best it can be. So, excuse me. So we'll move right along to the Big Ten Conference. Big Ten yesterday had the big game that I talked about. You know, I believe it was the only ranked matchup that we had was Michigan and Wisconsin. That was a good game. 24-10. It was the final. Wisconsin won at home. Moved to 11-0, 8-0 in the Big Ten. Michigan moved to 8-3, 5-3 in the Big Ten. With that said, if you watched any of that game, it was a very good game. Wisconsin put up the first points on a punt return for a touchdown. And really, if you pay attention, also keep this in mind for next week against Ohio State. Their quarterback went down, Brandon Peters. It looked like he hurt his shoulder because he laid on the ground for a while. And with that said, moving into that game against Ohio State, I don't know if he's going to be back. I didn't hear anything. He may be going in to do his x-rays and things like that this morning. And we may find out this evening that he's okay, and we may find out that he got something broke. It looked rough because just from the length of time that he was on the ground. So just keep that in mind because John O'Corn come in. I think he threw for 8 passes, completed 2 of them. He's just off. He's not. I don't think he. You know, obviously he's playing Division I college football, so he wasn't bad. And when he was at Houston, he wasn't bad. But he just cannot get it going in this offense for some reason. So just keep that in mind. They're going to have to rely on that run heavily next week against Ohio State. So Ohio State played Illinois yesterday. Won big, 52-14. They did not cover. I think that spread was like 40 or 41 points. And just could not cover, but at the same time, won big at home. They're number 9 in the country. And they moved to 9-2, 7-1 in the Big Ten. So I think that they have wrapped up the East in the Big Ten. That should give them the win, because if you look at the standings, Ohio State is now 7-1 in the conference. Penn State 6-2, and if Ohio State loses, they still have the head-to-head against Penn State. Now, and also Michigan State behind that. So either one of those, they have beat those 2 teams, so that should give Ohio State the win. Wisconsin's wrapped it up on the other side because the next best team in the West is Northwestern. They have 2 losses, so there's no way for them to catch up. Penn State looked like they were going to take care of business at home. They jumped out and put up 42 points in the first half, put up another 14 in the fourth. We're up 56-24 at one time. Actually, I think it was 56-17. And Nebraska just kept chipping away, started coming back, and made that a game at the end. I didn't watch it, so I don't know how close it actually was at the end, but I know that they scored a late touchdown, made it 56-44. So it may not have been that close of a game if you were watching it. I don't know. But just looking at everything and the highlights I've seen and keeping up with it as it was going on my phone, that kind of thing, it looked like Nebraska was trying to come back, and obviously they were. But I can't believe they got that close. So, moving along, Minnesota absolutely lays an egg at Northwestern. Goes in that game, turns the ball over way too many times. Northwestern gets a big victory at home, 39-0. Moves to 8-3, 6-2 in the Big Ten. While Minnesota falls to 5-6, looking for that 6th win, become bowl eligible. 2-6 in the Big Ten. Indiana also took care of business at home. Rutgers won on the road, needed a win. They were 4-6. Couldn't get anything going. Lose 41-0 on the road at Indiana. So Indiana moves to 5-6 and looks for that last win to become bowl eligible. And the last game in the Big Ten goes along with that one. Purdue gets a big win, moves to 5 wins. You guys know, if you've watched anything, that I have been on Purdue since the summer. In my opinion, that was the best hire during the offseason. Not Tom Herman at Texas. Not a few others that got hired. I think it was Jeff Brom at Purdue. And with the school he's at, it's going to be tough, like we know. But it's showing already. He's 5-6, has a chance to play for a bowl game next week. They beat Iowa. They moved to 5-6, 3-5 in Big Ten. Iowa moves to 6-5, and I was very high on them last week, you guys know, and last week was a tough week like we talked about. They moved 3-5 in the Big Ten. Purdue gets this win 24-15, and that lines up for a showdown next week in a game that you guys will probably not be watching, but it does mean a lot for these two teams. Indiana and Purdue play each other next week. Both of them will be 5-6 going into that game. So if you are looking at that game to bet it or just, as a good game, just keep in mind that both of them will be playing probably out of their minds because they're both trying to get a win to move on to the postseason. So again, Purdue and Indiana looking for that sixth win. And also Minnesota is 5-6, so they need another win. Problem is that they play the best team in their conference as far as record-wise. I'm not going on a limb saying they're the best team overall, but they play Wisconsin next week, who is undefeated. So I doubt Minnesota gets that win, and they may even keep it close, but I don't think they're going to be able to overpower Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin has showed that, yes, they're barely getting these wins. They're low scoring and everything, but they're getting those wins. So just keep that, in your head if you're looking at everything. Don't take away. I'm not saying they're gangbusters going out and winning by 50, but they're getting wins, and that's what you got to do to stay in this hunt. So just keep that in mind. They've taken care of everything. I don't think that they're better than Ohio State, personally, but I think that's going to be a very good game for the Big Ten championship. So with that said, that wraps the Big Ten up. We'll move to the Pac-12. So the Pac-12 last night was where I had all three of my official plays. Did go 2-1 in official plays, went 3-0 in leans. So, and also not only official plays, but I think I had 2 of the leans were Pac-12 games, and then 1 SEC game. And so USC played their last game of the season yesterday. Excuse me. USC played their last game of the regular season yesterday and moved to 10-2, beating UCLA 28-23. So that was a good game. If UCLA had a little comeback there at the end, they just couldn't ever get over the hump. If they could have just slowed them down for, I'm sorry. As far as NFL, I do have an article up. I don't have a video for that this week. Sorry, I had a comment on that. Thought I would address it real quick before I got back in these games. But if you go to thegoal60.com, you can find those. I've got, I think it was 5 leans. No problem. And thank you for watching. And I got those 5 leans up. Tennessee played on Thursday night. It didn't go the way I wanted. I'm having a tough NFL year. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I try to be as honest as I can. And I just have a lot better grab on college. And I haven't given up on NFL. I've just put them out all as leans because I'm just having a tough time with them. I'm still putting my data in every week, still coming up with projections, and I'm trying to make adjustments as we go. During the off season, I also have a little more time before baseball gets started to kind of go back, look at it, hopefully make some good adjustments for next season. But with that said, I'll jump back into college. So USC gets the win 28-23 at home against their rival. UCLA falls to 5-6. That moves them to needing one more win, and they play Cal next week, who also needs a win. So another big matchup there, just like we talked about in the Big Ten. Last night, one of the official plays we had was Washington and Utah over 47. It did cash. There was 66 total points scored in that game. It was a good game if you watched it. Washington gets the win 33-30, pushing their total or their season to 9-2, 6-2 in the Pac-12. Utah moves to 5-6, 2-6 in the Pac-12, but they need that one more win. I keep bringing that up, and as you can see, that's a big deal to me because, like I said, those teams need that win. They've got something to play for, so always take that in consideration. Cal Stanford, big rivalry game there. If you remember, I think everybody in history has seen that highlight of Cal, slinging the ball around that kickoff and scoring a touchdown, hitting the guy in the back. And also, I think he was down in that pile. But anyways, I won't go there. Cal comes up a little short. That was one of our leans.
getting 16.5. They lose by 3 on the road to Stanford, 17-14. Cal had a couple weeks to get ready for this game, so I thought that was a good spot. And it was as far as point spread, but they are still 5-6, needing to win. Stanford moves to 8-3. And with that win, Stanford eliminates Washington from the Pac-12 North. Now, Stanford can still get in if Washington beats Washington State in the Apple Cup this Saturday. If Washington State wins, they're in. They're the Pac-12 North champion. If Stanford needs Washington State to lose, and if Washington State loses, therefore Stanford would have the tiebreaker. They take over the Pac-12 North. Arizona State and Oregon State, that was one of our plays. We had Arizona State -7. They won 40-24. That game was a lot better our direction early, and they gave up 14 in the fourth quarter. So they get a 16-point victory there. Move on to 6-5, become bowl eligible. 5-3 in the Pac-12. Oregon State continues with their season of 1-10, 0-8 in the Pac-12. And the last game was our miss on our official plays. Arizona and Oregon had Arizona in a pick'em. They lost by 3 touchdowns, so that obviously wasn't a good pick there. They lose 48-28, move to 7-4, 5-3 in the Pac-12, while Oregon becomes bowl eligible at 6-5, 3-5 in the Pac-12. So Oregon, that I think, in my opinion, that defense is starting to come alive. I think it's Jim Leavitt is his name. That guy, if you followed him, at one time he was at South Florida head coaching. Had his team up in like number 3 or number 2 in the country during that crazy 2007 season when we had a ton of teams losing every week. Great season for football. But anyways, Jim Leavitt gets in trouble down there. I think he got a little overhyped. He seems like one of those guys that's a little too emotional, but it works for him any other time. But anyways, he hit a player in the locker room and got fired, moved on. He was at Colorado last year. And Colorado had a good season. This guy knows his stuff. Great defensive guy. He goes to Oregon this year. Obviously, they've had some problems. Oregon does not have the talent yet. But you see later on in the season, they're starting to get better. So if you pay attention to them, if Jim Leavitt leaves again, they may not be what I'm about to say. But if Jim Leavitt's there again next year, that defense is going to be a lot better. They're going to make a lot of strides during the offseason. Now that they're going to a bowl game, they got at least 15 extra practices, and then they got the spring. That defense is going to be really good next year. So I think Willie Taggart, if he stays, they've talked about him coming back to Florida and stuff. If they stay at Oregon, you're going to see a lot better team next year. And also Justin Herbert played in that game. And we've been talking about him for a couple weeks. He's been hurt most of the season. He come back, goes 14-21 for 235 yards, which is a complete opposite of what they've been able to do passing the football. So Justin Herbert means a ton to that team, to Oregon. So keep that in mind this week. They play their rival in the Civil War, play Oregon State. That should not be a close game. That's a bad team against a good team. Getting their quarterback back on the good team, it's just that shouldn't, even with a rivalry game and usually the underdog is the team, I don't think in this case. I think Oregon gets that win next week. But I hadn't seen the number. I think that all comes out later on today. So we'll just keep that in mind. So that wraps up the Pac-12. Before we leave the Pac-12, just real quick, like I said, Stanford, Washington State in the competition for the North. USC's got the South. UCLA has Cal this week. Both of those teams need a win to get the bowl eligibility. So one of them's going to be knocked out. The other one's going in. The same thing holds true for Colorado and Utah. So 2 big games in the Pac-12 that could keep teams, big games as far as those teams getting to the postseason. Not necessarily for the conference, but for the postseason and getting bowl eligible. So moving along, the last one is the SEC. The SEC yesterday, full of cupcakes. Like I said earlier in the video, if you watched it from the start, trust me, guys, if you're outside the SEC, I am a Alabama fan. Went to school there. That is my place. But I can tell you this right now: I hate these cupcake games. Hate them. To me, they're a waste. They're a waste of money for the season ticket holders, for the students. If you looked at that student section yesterday, it was ridiculous. There was probably 1,000 students there, and that student section holds over 10,000. It's a big one. So, I mean, that, ever since Saban's got there, obviously we've had great success. Wouldn't change a thing other than that cupcake game right before Auburn. Traditionally, and that goes for other schools. Auburn does the same thing. Auburn played Louisiana Monroe yesterday. South Carolina played Woolford before they played Clemson. In the ACC, Clemson plays the Citadel. I hate those cupcake games. Even if it's not going to be a conference game, I just wished it was a little bit better competition. And I know the old thing, obviously when we're fighting for a championship, you got teams that don't want to get anybody hurt. I understand that. But we play 12 games. That's all we play as far as the regular season. Why not have some competition? Why not have something that people want to see? And also, I think you can get better. I think a lot of times these cupcake games, even if you don't get hurt, guy goes up there and plays 10 plays, what does that really do for him for that week? So I don't like them. But anyways, with that said, Alabama gets a 56-point victory over Mercer. Auburn gets a 42-14 victory over Louisiana Monroe. They did go into halftime, only leading that game 14-7. So they almost let Louisiana Monroe play with them a little too hard there. So we're getting it going in the second half, put up 28 more points in the second half. South Carolina beats Woolford 31-10. And Florida beat UAB 36-7, which is kind of a shock if you take into consideration there's a lot of people, that spread was 10.5 points. UAB's playing very well this year, considering they didn't even have a team last year. But Florida gets something going at home, moves to 4-6. And then the rest of them were actually conference games. So the best one to me that I thought was going to be one of the best ones was actually Kentucky and Georgia. The reason I thought that was I thought that with Georgia coming off a loss, I thought they would go back to being, real conservative and trying to get their basics back under them. The blocking, tackling, things that they just could not do against Auburn, and stupid penalties and things like that. I thought they'd try to really focus on that. But they come out, they played great. Kentucky did not. And Georgia gets a 42-13 victory. Moves to 10-1, 7-1 in the SEC. Mississippi State and Arkansas, if you had anything, you seen that game or anything, that Arkansas actually came out, played everything they could. They were 4-6 going into that game. They played pretty well, had the lead all the way through the game, and then let Mississippi State come back and beat them 28-21. State moves to 8-3. They're having a very good year. 4-3 in the SEC, ranked number 16 going in that game. All right, the next game was last night. It was LSU and Tennessee. And right after halftime, really neat to see, is right after halftime, it was a monsoon, raining sideways. It was great to watch football. Coach O was excited. He was pumped. And they come out. They took care of business, 130-10. That game was a lot better at halftime. It was 17-10 at halftime. And that monsoon came in. It was something to see. And if you haven't, go back and check that out on YouTube or something. See that, because it was crazy. A lot of rain there for a good 5-10 minutes. Couldn't see the ball. The referee put the ball on the ground, takes a step back. The wind was so hard, the ball started rolling away. It rolled a good 10 yards before they even caught it. So it was just kind of fun to see. Different type of football game. Tennessee moves to 4-7, while LSU moves to 8-3, 5-2 in the SEC, and continues their good year. I had them at 8-4 for the year on my preseason video, and I'm talking about LSU. And I think they got a good shot at going 9-3. They finish up with A&M, so that's kind of a toss-up game. I mean, it's a semi-rivalry game. It's really big on recruiting. If you're familiar with the areas, Baton Rouge and Houston is not that far apart. And, College Station is just right north of Houston. So those two teams recruit Houston really heavily. So generally, whoever wins that game is tends to get a little edge in recruiting that year. They may pick up an extra player or two, and it means a lot for those two teams to win that game just for that reason of recruiting for the next couple months. And especially this year since we have the early signing period. So it may mean a lot if there's a recruit or something down there that's on the edge of both those teams. They may be leaning one way or the other. These guys, the two schools are about the same in my opinion. Both big SEC West schools. Both have really nice facilities. And, you know, if you're on the fence, take the team that's winning, I guess. I don't know how that goes in consideration, but it seems to every year. You take one team that's won one more game or something like that, and they usually get the kid. A&M goes on the road last night to Ole Miss, takes care of business. Ole Miss kind of kept beating herself in the head there. They couldn't really get over the hump. They were winning 24-21 there late in the third quarter, and quarterback throws an interception for pick six, and then they just could not get over the hump to finish out that game. They end up losing 31-24. A&M moves on to 7-4, 4-3 in the SEC, and this is a very interesting case to me because all year we've heard about how A&M wanted rid of Sumlin, right? So they wanted him gone. All the fans were tired of him. He's 7-4. He's got a chance to go 8-4. And I believe the last 3 years he's been 8-4. And I know that's sounds like it's, you know, it's not great. He's not fighting for a championship. He's also not missing a bowl game. So I don't know where you go there. It'd be interesting to see how they go, if they think that that's not enough or if that's just enough to keep him another year. It seems like he's always on the hot seat the last couple of years, so we'll see what happens. And then the last game, Missouri at Vanderbilt. Missouri is on a roll. They're 6-5 now, 3-4 in the SEC. They have, I believe, they won 5 straight. That moves them into a bowl game and eliminates Vandy from going to a bowl game. Vanderbilt moves to 4-7, 0-7 in the SEC. And next week you've got Vanderbilt and Tennessee playing for the both of them are 0-7 in the SEC. So tough years there. One of them's going to get their first conference win of the year, the last game of the regular season. Neither one of them's going to a bowl. Or won't be really. None of you guys are probably going to watch that game. I'm not going to watch that game. There's too much good football, and it starts on Thursday this week. As far as the SEC goes, the East is wrapped up Georgia. The West is between Alabama and Auburn. Lines up for a great Iron Bowl. This is what we're, accustomed to seeing here the last couple of years, thankfully. A big game for the last one, and traditionally, if you're not familiar with the Iron Bowl, it's huge. It's year-round down here. They don't play. It could be the middle of baseball season, and when somebody comes by you and says War Eagle or Roll Tide, they're not talking about baseball. They're talking about football. So it's a big deal down here. Rivalry games all over the country this week. It's huge. Nobody in the SEC is going to become bowl eligible this week. That's to determine the teams. There's too many teams that are 4-7, and then there's a gap there. So keep that in mind. There's really not a lot to play for in the SEC as far as bowl eligibility. The West, the Iron Bowl is huge. That's going to be determine who goes to do the SEC championship to play Georgia. And then you're going to play some upsets. So, like I said, their games start this Thursday. Ole Miss and Mississippi State in the Cotton Bowl plays on Thanksgiving night. Traditionally, that's how it used to be way back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. They played on Thanksgiving. On Friday, we're loaded with games. We got games all over the country being played. And then Saturday, of course, the big day for the rest of them. So just keep that in mind. I hope all of you have a great Thanksgiving no matter what you do, whether it be traveling, be safe, if it be, just hanging out and eating a pizza. I don't know. Whatever you do, have a great time. Enjoy everything, all these games that we got. Just be thankful that we got all this great college football to watch. Good luck in everything you do. And I'll see you next week to recap that. Also, I'll have out my videos this week. We'll have them out Tuesday for all this, the previews for this week and getting ready for this weekend. You're welcome. I really appreciate you all watching this video. It means a ton to me that you're taking the time out of your day to watch it. Hope that you got some good information. And if so, give some more comments. I love this stuff. Love the feedback. It means a lot, and it helps me out. As far as NFL, like we talked about earlier, not doing too good, but I do have an article up, thegoal60.com. It's Week 11 NFL. And follow me at thegoal60 on Twitter. Until then, appreciate it, and good luck. Thanks.